Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's Patrice Onwuka here in for Larry O'Connor. Larry is celebrating his son's high school graduation. And so joining me today all morning has been Hans von Spakovsky from the Heritage Foundation. Hans, can you believe it's been 3 hours of fun?
The final hour, and I think we saved the best for last with our next guest.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. Well, with no other ado, we've got Steve Moore, your colleague, someone that I work with as well in the economic realm, here to talk to us about, everything going on from the tariffs to the big, beautiful bill. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, Hans. Hi, Patrice. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Good to have you. Well, before we jump into some of the economic stuff, would love your reflections on Elon Musk's last day, official day, heading up DOGE.
You know, it's funny you should ask. I just wrote a column on this, and I think it's, first of all, I do think that Elon Musk is a hero. I think what he did coming to Washington, putting his business on hold at his own cost, he was never paid a dime to come to Washington to clean up the mess. And what's the old saying that no good deed ever goes unpunished in Washington? Well, that was clearly the case here. I mean, first of all, he's a hero for exposing the hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud, waste, theft from the federal government. And instead of being treated as a hero in Washington, he was seen as a pariah, and so I find it disgusting, actually, that people started spray painting people's Teslas because they hated what Trump and Elon Musk were doing. But he really did show to the American people so many examples. I mean, people 125 years old getting Social Security benefits, and the fact that the USAID, the major foreign policy program, lost track of hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. They couldn't even tell us where the money went. Going on and on with the duplication of programs. And the title of my piece, by the way, Patrice, was, did Elon Musk drain the swamp, or did he drown in it? And unfortunately, I think he might have drowned in it. But I do think it's a sad commentary that Americans didn't rally behind him. And one last thing, I know you don't want to talk about other issues, but what was most surprising, I think, to people like us is that the left, instead of being, furious about the way government money was being wasted and the fraudulent payments, they directed their anger not at the people who are defrauding the government, but at Elon Musk for exposing it.
Well, that's very revealing about them, and frankly, the consequences to him, what was happening to Tesla cars, to his dealerships.
Yep.
That also, I think, to the American public, exposed the extremism and radicalism of the left and those who want big government to stay in place and can completely control our lives.
Yeah, Hans, let me just, you're exactly right about that. And, I'm always asked about, well, why is it that so many people on the left defended the waste and the fraud and the theft from the government? And I think we know the answer now, because they're in on it.
Right,
I mean, that's how they get rich.
Well, so moving to the big, beautiful bill, which is going to deal with some of at least the waste in Medicaid and the fraud in Medicaid, really. Steve, we've seen it move through the House. Thank God for that. House Speaker deserves a ton of credit for shepherding all of the factions through. It's now heading to the Senate, where there are some potential hiccups. Can you walk us through what some of the potential hiccups are and really what Americans should be thinking about and how they can be motivated to ensure that they don't get a tax increase at the end of this year?
Well, how much time have you got? It's a bumpy road ahead. But first of all, I want to salute Ron Johnson, the Speaker of the House, for doing an amazing job with a 2 or 3 or 4. I can't keep track how big that majority is, but it's very slim. I think 3 or 4 seats, and getting to a 1-seat victory was quite an accomplishment. It's a good bill. It's a good bill. It's not a great bill. It's a good bill. It does extend. The most important thing is it heads off a $4 trillion tax increase next year on January 1st. And most Americans polls show most Americans aren't even aware of that this time bomb is ticking. And if we don't get this thing done, the average family, I'm not talking about millionaires and billionaires, the average family would face a $2,500 a year on average tax increase next year. So there's failure is not an option here. We have to get this done. Now, my frustration with the bill, and I think Hans, a lot of our friends at Heritage share this sentiment. Where are the spending cuts? Here I'll just give you one statistic that kind of blows me away. Over the next 10 years, the federal government is expected to spend $85 trillion and borrow almost $20 trillion. So $85 trillion of spending is sort of the baseline. Under the Republican budget, are you ready? Are you strapped in? Are you ready for this? Under the Republican budget, the $85 trillion goes all the way down to $83 trillion. I mean, and the left acts is like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. People are going to lose their health care, and pregnant women are going to have prenatal care, and the rural hospitals are going to shut down, and kittens will be killed. I mean, the frenzy over this bill, Hans, it really doesn't cut much of anything, and that's my problem with it.
Yeah, well, but let me ask you a question about that. I'm assuming that the reason for that is that Speaker Johnson, for example, didn't think he could get it through because his margin is so narrow in the House, that any attempt, even if they could get it through the House, it would be filibustered in the Senate, and they wouldn't be able to overcome that.
Well, yeah, that's right. I mean, when you got a very slim majority like the Speaker has, you can't lose many votes. I think what really frustrates a lot of us as conservatives is that we couldn't. We had to make this big adjustment on the state and local tax deduction, which there's no reason people should be able to deduct their state and local taxes from their federal taxes. All that does is encourage states and localities like Washington, D.C. and Maryland. I live in Montgomery County, Maryland. We're like the 9th highest tax county in the country. And so, I'm not speaking in self-interest here, but I don't think counties and states should be able to, have their high taxes deducted. It's not fair to people who live in Florida and Texas with low taxes that they have to pay more federal taxes to subsidize Washington, D.C., Maryland, my home state of Illinois, New York, and so on. So you won't believe this, that we took the deduction from $10,000 cap now to $40,000. And the only people are actually the irony of that is the only people who are going to benefit from that are millionaires and billionaires living in blue states. So, I think there's frustration with that. But overall, I think this will get done. It's going to get through the Senate, and I just don't know how long it will take. Trump wants a bill by 4th of July. Boy, I'd love to see that, but that's a heavy lift.
Steve, do you mind staying with us another segment? We want to ask you a few
more
questions.
To.
All right,
okay,
terrific.
Sure.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Steve, wanted to get your read on the tariffs. This morning we talked a lot about the tariff back and forth. We've seen the federal courts now say that the Trump tariffs can continue to go into effect. What is your view of the tariff leg of kind of the broader economic Trump agenda, which has been deregulation, energy production, tax cuts, and then tariffs?
Well, obviously, the court decision from a couple days ago really threw a wrench in Trump's plans because the court ruled that the president does not have unilateral authority to raise taxes. And I happen to agree with that. I mean, I'm a Trump guy. I love what Trump is doing. I'm not a huge fan of his tariffs, but I think he's used them pretty effectively. But the court said, look, the Constitution, as I read it, is pretty clear that all tax bills start in the House of Representatives. Hans is more of an expert on this than I am. But so I wasn't too surprised that the courts overruled this. But then I'm trying to figure this out because I read then yesterday, an appeals court put a stay on that, And so the market's going up and down and up and down with these court decisions. And so I don't know where this is all going to end. I don't know, Hans, if you have any thoughts about this. But, look, I think that the timing was kind of unfortunate because Trump has been kind of on a roll with getting these countries, using the tariffs as a kind of leverage to get these countries like the UK and China, and now it looked like the European Union was coming to the table to get a better deal for the U.S. So I'm kind of mixed minds on this.
I mean, he's been using it as a negotiating negotiating tool to get concessions and things from them. Actually, I got a very difficult question for you. But I want to go back to your first segment where you were talking about the enormous debt that we have and enormous deficits. And look, I come at this question from a family standpoint. I'm first generation. My grandmother lived through the Weimar Republic, the collapse of the German economy because of enormous debt. And my question is, we're a terrific country. We have a terrific economy, but how much time have we got to solve this problem before we face the potential of a collapse of the economy the way the Weimar Republic saw it?
Well, boy, first of all, who would have ever thought with the name like Hans you were German? So, look, I mean, history is pretty clear about this, that, some of the great republics, including the German Republic and the Rome, basically were undone by unbridled, out-of-control government spending. So we should certainly learn the lesson of history. So I am worried about it. And I think it's like termites in the basement of your house. If you don't do something about it, the entire house is going to collapse. And we're now, just to give you some perspective on this, Hans, you and I may be a little older than you, but I came to Washington in 1984. So that's 40 some years ago. When I first came, and I was at Heritage at the time, Ronald Reagan introduced the first $1 trillion budget. And for the first time in history, the debt went over $1 trillion. Now here we are 40 years later, and our budget isn't $1 trillion, it's $7 trillion, and the debt isn't $1 trillion, it's $36.5 trillion. So this is a cancer cell in our economy. Everyone knows we have to do something about it. Now, here's the thing. We have to do two things, okay? Write these things down. Number one, we got to get control of the spending. We just have to cap it. We should, why not just do a 10% across the board cut in every government program this year, just as a starting bid to get the budget down? And then second of all, we got to grow the economy. We got to get the growth rate up. And Trump is a ton of that. If we can get to 3 to 3.5% annual growth, we're going to start to bend that curve down because more people working, more businesses started, more profits, means more tax revenues. And that's the lesson of Reagan and John F. Kennedy and Calvin Coolidge, for goodness sakes. Every time we cut tax rates, good things happen for the economy. So that's my take on it. But you're right, Hans. It is a scary thing, and nobody in Washington seems to care.
Well, Steve, as we are wrapping up, would love for you to talk about your latest Daily Caller op-ed. You said it's titled, "Yes, Let's Attract the Best and the Brightest." And how interesting it is that you're speaking to a first-generation immigrant in Hans, and I'm actually an immigrant. I came from the Caribbean with my family, and I think we speak to the fact that you can bring great talent to the United States to help build this country. And there are lots of ways to get at that, doing it the legal way, even as you deport those who are here illegally. Talk to us about your op-ed.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to know you're two of those damn immigrants that steal all the jobs from Americans. Look, I mean, immigration obviously has been a huge blessing to America, but they have to come in legally. And what happened under Biden was such a shame because he actually polluted and contaminated the immigration system by just letting anybody come in. We didn't know who they were. Trump wants a smart immigration system that does get the best and the brightest and the hardest working people. And so there are a bunch of programs like, one of them I'll mention because it hits here home here in Washington, D.C. When you go out to the beaches, in New Jersey and the Delaware beaches and so on, have you noticed like all the workers are like Eastern Europeans? I don't know if you the waiters and that's what we call the seasonal immigration system where people come in from Poland or Hungary or Slovakia and they, fill those jobs because a lot of those beach towns wouldn't even be able to exist without those workers. So they come in like on a 6-month visa and then they leave. But we have other programs too. We've got one that I like is called the EB-5 program, which basically says if you come into the country and you invest, I think it's $1 million in a depressed area, maybe an inner city or a rural area that's run down, you start a business there and employ a certain number of people, you get a visa. And I love that. Everyone benefits from that. So let's be very smart about, the people we let in. But we do need the best and the brightest, and we do get the best and the brightest, notwithstanding, some of the criminal elements that came in illegally under Biden. I have to say, by the way, Tom Homan, Hans, Tom, I know Tom. Right. He is one of the heroes, isn't he? I mean, he's been in there 3 months, and in 3 months, he did it in 3 weeks practically. He got the border secure, something Biden couldn't do in 4 years.
No, in fact, they said, it can't be done. That was the thing. They all said it can't be done, and Tom Homan comes in and does it. By the way, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a great photo that somebody publicized of him as a young officer. He looks like a Hollywood actor from Starsky and Hutch in it. I mean, it's a great photo.
All right, gentlemen, we have to leave it right there.
I was just going to wait last one. What it proves is it wasn't that we couldn't control the border. It was that Biden didn't want to control the border. Right. They wanted these illegal immigrants in the country. Yep.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. You too.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now.